Who does the justice system really serve? When Chris Coons asks that question, he's not just looking for a technical answer. He's trying to draw a clear line between two very different ideas of what the Department of Justice is supposed to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McDonald, thank you for your dedication to federal service, to your wife, to your children, to your parents, to your family. Thank you for your recognizing the blessing of the opportunity to serve. I am interested in hearing your perspective, not just on the role you're being nominated to, but the general direction of fraud enforcement under this administration. Look, Americans, Delawareans, folks of all backgrounds rely on critical federal programs. And when the money that is supposed to be spent by those programs is diverted to fraud, is stolen, that reduces the amount of resources available to do good in our society. And I agree with you. We need to make sure that Americans' tax dollars are spent wisely and those funds are going where they really should go. I am concerned, however, the administration is less concerned with specifically fighting fraud than with targeting people and states it dislikes or that it has a partisan agenda against. One of the reasons I've got this concern is seeing that at the same time the administration's creating a new DOJ division and suggesting it may be directed by the White House, they have shut down or eliminated or defunded other anti-fraud units like the Consumer Protection Branch, like the Tax Division. I think if President Trump were serious about combating fraud, he'd be applauding the great work done by the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office under the previous administration to tackle social services fraud instead of running attorneys out of that office. And if he were serious about tackling fraud, he wouldn't be pardoning the very people that dedicated career prosecutors like yourself spent years investigating and prosecuting for stealing from American taxpayers. Let me just start with you, Mr. McDonald. You've spent almost your entire career at the Justice Department as a nonpartisan, apolitical prosecutor. Who does the Department of Justice work for, sir?
Senator, first, with respect to some of the assertions in the lead up to your question,
it's a pretty simple question. Who's the Department of Justice work for, sir?
Senator, I do want to point out that in the last year, the DOJ has had record-setting years in the area of fraud. Under the False Claims Act, we recovered 12%.
Fines collected from anti-money laundering violations are down 54%. Investigations into tax fraud schemes are down 63%. 25,000 federal agents, including many folks I suspect you worked with, dedicated to investigating white-collar crimes, have been diverted to immigration enforcement. Let me move on to just a simple point I wanted to put in front of you. It takes a huge amount of work and investigation and time for you and other dedicated prosecutors to develop a case, to bring it, and to win a conviction, correct?
Senator, there is an extensive amount of work that goes into every federal prosecution, and that's because on the right side of the V is a human being that has rights that must be protected, and we do that every day in the Department of Justice with a mind for the names on the right side of the V.
And balancing that is a key part of achieving justice, which you are dedicated to. So then how do you explain to your team or to a group of prosecutors who have spent years, a case like Trevor Milton, the founder of Nikola Corporation, he committed securities and wire fraud for misleading investors. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He was ordered to pay nearly $700 million in restitution. In October of 24, he and his wife gave $1.8 million to the president's campaign. He was subsequently pardoned in March of last year, eliminating not just the sentence, but the massive restitution. I'll give you the case of Lawrence Duran, the owner of American Therapeutic. He pled guilty to defrauding Medicare of $200 million and was sentenced to 50 years in prison and ordered to pay $87 million in restitution. In May, the president commuted his sentence and pardoned him also, including restitution. How would you explain to your dedicated career team that's investigating fraudsters the president's repeated pattern of pardoning folks, of forgiving not just their sentence, but their restitution obligations in exchange for political contributions?
Senator, respectfully, I do disagree with assertions made there in the lead up to your question. What I will be doing with my team is I will be equipping them and I will be ensuring that they have everything that they need to go after this fraud better than we've ever done it before.
On paper, the DOJ exists to enforce the law impartially. It represents the United States, not a president, not a political party, not an agenda. Its legitimacy depends on the idea that decisions are made based on evidence, law, and fairness, not political loyalty. But what Coons is doing here is challenging whether that principle is being upheld in practice. Notice how he sets it up. He doesn't start with accusations. He starts with agreement that fraud matters, that taxpayer money should be protected, that enforcement is essential. That's deliberate. It establishes common ground before introducing the concern that the focus may be shifting away from fighting fraud and toward targeting political opponents or priorities.